Right. And technology wise, we're good live streaming. Alrighty, so 6:02, I'll place order. First part of this meeting is a work session, but we will start with a roll call. Well, if you could chime in, Christy.
Here.
Ricardo. Crystal.
Here.
Richard. Let's see the screen is Richard on.
Is Richard on? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I'm on. Thank you.
Here. Bill. Here. Heidi.
Here.
And chairs here, so we have a quorum. You guys will all join me in flag salute. And pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving right along, we will start with second reading and adoption. And I don't know if you had any clarifying notes that you wanted to add in. Oh, I'm sorry, I have policy updates. No, that was like this, so that, yeah. Having discussion.
Oh, were you waiting for us? Sorry, I thought that it was reported to Ginger. I didn't know it was.
But this is
To us.
Yes,
Okay.
so these, yeah,
I did add some notes. I don't know if the notes that I added earlier today show in there? I added some notes to the IK policy, which was the academic achievement policy, regarding the bracketing. And I put those in there earlier today so that Ginger could have an opportunity to like acknowledge that that's what we were on. And then, so if you guys want to look at that, under number 1, we had parents and students will be informed at least annually. May was also in there. And then,
You want to take them one at a time, I'm sorry, just so we want to.
oh, yeah,
Do it one at a time.
yeah, go ahead.
In my initial presentation, the word will was identified as a suggestion for the bracket. Result.
And then the second one that I had a question on was part C of that. And I wasn't clear on those brackets, evidence of students' progress in a continuum of knowledge and skills that are not academic, and that may include student behaviors that are defined by the district. And so my question was, does this SEL type portion belong in the academic achievement policy?
A good question. So the question is a behavior only social emotional learning. And I think in this particular context, academic achievement, social emotional learning is not part of that we would be talking about academic type behaviors like the amount of to which or the frequency at which someone turns in assignments on a regular basis or checks in with the teacher, receives feedback, responds to feedback, those types of indicators that a student is engaged, taking ownership for their work, those types of things that I think are identified in the academic achievement, not the social emotional learning piece.
Yeah, and that was my concern. I didn't want students to, the way it reads is student behaviors that are defined by the district. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't penalizing them or using academic portions like not turning in homework or whatever that sort of thing, or like they got in a fight at school that would penalize their grading. So that was what I was looking for. And then that's this thing that, yeah, no, you're good.
So where would we find what those behaviors that are defined by the district?
We don't have them yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But someday they'll.
We may be able to, yeah, we may be able to have a conversation about it. Further on in the policy, it says that you cannot have the same, if you have an academic grade about academic achievement, it cannot be tied to a behavior indicator. So they're clearly separated. That you
Okay.
can give students feedback for that, but it cannot be tied to their academic grade. So it would be a different measure.
And it kind of says it in number 3.
Yeah.
And it says behavior performance shall be reported separately. So I wanted that left in there so that it clearly identifies that this is an academic. So it will not impact.
Isn't it written that way that it'll stand?
Well, I wasn't sure because of the bracketing, then we have to say, yes, we want it to stand correctly, right? So that was my perspective. And the same with, on that, it says or behavior includes student attitude or behavior. Those are two things that I felt like I wanted it to be very clear. That was my question on that one.
Heidi or Richard, any comments on this particular policy?
No comments here. Thank you.
I don't have a comment, thank you.
Do anything better? No.
Go ahead.
I had something back on the special education one. Didn't go to that one. There are a couple of sentences in here, like, let me see, on number 3, part B. Let's see what page that is.
Was the IEP one?
It's, yeah, number 3 is IEP team members. And then it goes down to B, where it talks about student participation. I feel like it feels not great when we say, when we put a label on the student as whenever appropriate, the student with a disability is a member of the team. Like, why can't we just write the student as a member of the team?
Cheryl, would you like to address that question?
Because
Can you say the whole sentence for me?
yeah, whenever appropriate, the student with a disability is a member of the team. We're talking about an IEP with an individual student. Why can't we just write the student as a member of the team, as opposed to putting a label on that? There were a couple sentences like that in this policy that just didn't feel like there's no, we don't need to put a qualifier on it, right? We're talking about a single student, a single IEP. We all understand what an IEP is. Why add that to the sentence? It doesn't clarify anything for me.
Does it say at the top, sorry, I don't have it memorized, but does it say at the top, like, student is, you know how sometimes they'll say like, parent is, the definition of a parent is this, the definition of student in this policy equals this, and to say if that's the top, I'm trying to pull it up really quick. Because if that's the case, you could put it at the top, like, you know, give definition to who the team members are at the top, so then it's implied for the rest of the policy of who we're talking about as student.
It says the IEP team members include the following: the student's parents, the student, if the purpose of the IEP meeting is to consider the student's post-secondary goals and transition services, or for younger students when appropriate. And then on from there, other individuals.
At the top, it does say the general IEP information, and it talks about the district ensures that an IEP is in effect for each eligible student, and then it has a list of 3 things. So I can hear where you're coming from, Christy, on,
It just.
you know,
feels
if
like-
the student is reading this, then it really does give that impression that we're actually trying to have it, I don't know really how to word it, but it does give that impression that they are not always bring worth or value to the table, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Would it, so the newest verbiage is, you know, a person experiencing a disability or experiencing disability, would that read differently? than
Well,
with the disability, or
I
is
guess-
that all?
It's, I don't understand, like, at the beginning, the first one, the student ensures an IEP is in effect for each eligible student with 3 different categories of how a student might be eligible for an IEP, right? And so in here, we talk about things that may be qualifying students for IEPs. So then why later are we not just referring to students as students with IEPs? I feel like, I don't know, it brushed me the wrong way. And it didn't add anything to the sentences. And we've already defined what our students with IEPs are. So why can't we just call them our students with IEPs or students? Because that's what
I
we're
like
talking about.
students if you're gonna.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I can see where you're going with this, because above just glancing through the team members portion, it talks about the student's parents, not the disabled student's
right.
parents.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, so it's 50, yeah, it's a lot of times in here, it's fine, but there are a couple of lines where it restates that in a way that just brushes me the wrong way, I don't know, you know,
Well, I think as a student reading this,
right,
if you were exploring the policy that applies to you, this could be detrimental. So are we wanting to table that one till we can look at
So
it?
we can either table, or if you want to make a recommendation to strike certain words. I don't know if you're prepared to that, otherwise we can just table that.
Both the exact one.
okay, so I was the ones that I saw that stood out, were in section 3 IEP team members, B1. So we could just say whenever appropriate, the student is a member of the team. Right? And then, let me find the other one.
Sorry, yeah.
I do think there was like one more in
There is
somewhere.
for sure, and I didn't
We can go back and
bring
find
mine out.
it. Anywhere there's a reference to disabled student should be changed to the student.
Yeah,
Well,
If-
I mean,
When appropriate.
I think when appropriate, and I think I know that I only wrote down 2 times that just. I don't even, it's even here, but.
Okay.
So those are the only 2 changes and the motion is made with those changes. I believe it could be.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we can either, I mean, we can go two ways.
Not yet, I'm still looking.
We could go 2 ways with it. If you want more time to think about it and really fine tune that particular verbiage. Or if you want to just make that motion to change on those 2 specific areas, we can go forward that way too, so.
Heidi, Richard, any comment?
I would support Christie's recommendation.
As well. Thank you.
Another spot.
I literally have just seen it and now I'm like, okay, on page 10.
Oh, I'm sorry, was there a suggestion for a specific edit to the policy, or are we coming back to that later? Or
I think we're trying to find two.
I found it. It's on, it's on, oh, I don't know what it's under. It's like,
10B.
10B1.
Yeah.
and yeah, that's it. It's 10, no, I don't know. Hang on, I just lost it. It's 12, transfer students, A.
That one's a little bit different, but I will. It's very much implied who the student is in this. Well, actually, that's fine because under A, it talks about student burden, IEP has determined such are necessary, they any service provider, so. Yeah.
So do we have 3 or do we just want 2?
I see 3, but,
We'll call out the third one so that we can.
oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say make reference
It's
to
fine.
it so we can.
12A. 12, yeah, 12A.
Yeah. Who had, because it says who had an IEP, so you have to have a qualifying.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because 12B doesn't have it.
Right, yeah, so. Yeah, that was kind of like, well, we really don't need those in here, so let's just get them out since they feel bad. Those are all the ones I see.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I just have one more, I'm sorry. On IKF, the graduation requirement. So my question was on number 8, we did add that 25th credit, right? Does that the 25th credit? I was curious, and this may not be the appropriate time for it, but the one credit in career planning, career development, is this an area that we can work on that, where when we had talked about as a board, an extracurricular activity or a club, or there are several things we talked about that could encourage students to participate. So I wasn't sure if we wanted to add that in there, or is there a specific course in career planning, career development? Because I don't want to get us tied into college. That, I don't want it to be like, yeah, one avenue.
You guys like that?
Yeah, right now the class that is that 25th credit is a specific, it's like a class that focuses on the career-related learning standards, so the CURLEs,
Mhm.
and I believe teacher is here.
Planning class is where you do but the development is their senior presentation that finishes the first.
Okay, so is it just for college-based or focused on college? Okay. Okay. So that was my thing, is like, should we expand this, or should this one credit really just be career planning, career development?
All of them are requirements of the group.
And I do believe as part of the policy, if we add that additional credit that goes beyond the 24 credits of Oregon diploma, there's specific categories it has to fall in, and one of them is the college and career planning.
Okay,
And I can't remember, there were 2 other potential categories it could fall in, but other than that, we can't expand beyond.
okay. And then my only other thing was we had an option 1 or 2, and I just liked how option 2 sounded, but I'd be open to either at the bottom of the page.
You talking in the footnote?
It's a footnote.
Yeah,
Okay. And what was your suggestion, Crystal?
I just liked how the second one, it just seemed to flow a little better, in my opinion. But I mean, I would be willing to do either.
I'm fine with option 2.
Preference, anybody else? Heidi or Richard, preference on option 1 or 2?
I'm not sure I'm tracking, actually.
The footnote
Yeah.
in the bottom on page 2-7 of IKF. We have a footnote option because we require 25 credits. So we have to choose between option 1 or option 2. It's highlighted pink. Or I guess technically like raspberry.
Yeah, I'll have to, that's not showing on the screen, I don't think.
In pink on the screen?
Yeah, it's at the bottom, yeah.
I see it. It's a footnote under modified diploma. Is that what we're looking at?
It's right above modified diploma. So it's a footnote above modified diploma, yes. Page 2 of 7. This is my only other question.
Am I to understand it's just rewording the same word, rearranging the same words?
It sounds like it. It's option 1 or option 2. I just like the way option 2 flows, but I'm open to either. What do you think, Bill?
I can go with either, but 2 probably sounds better.
Includes the inclusion of specific grade level 9 through 12. That's kind of the difference.
Ooh, so is that accurate though? What about the 8th graders pulling in a credit? So maybe we do go with option 1?
I don't know. The 8th graders are in credit? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, then, yeah.
Mhm.
Right, well, I'm glad I said that then.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
go
then we'll
with
have to go with option 1. Right, well, that was easy. Then the only other question I had was, and this was more of a clarification, a modified diploma, they only have 12 core curriculum classes. When I added up the credits. So So they have 12 electives, or we have,
Yes,
is that standard?
yes, is what the.
Okay. I just clarifying, I'm like, seems really low, but okay. I think that's all I have on that.
Anybody want to tackle a motion?
Sorry, I have another question.
Okay, go ahead.
On JGAB, the use of restraint or seclusion. What page is this? 3-5. It says the district shall utilize the MANDT training program. But there's nothing in the footnote that talks about that.
It's a specific training, Cheryl.
Yeah, I thought I read something in there.
So yeah,
Oh, there,
that's
yeah.
the specific training, but the footnote there,
You want a definition?
well, we must identify it, so.
Yeah.
Something needs to go
I
there.
will pull, well, just says that the district may identify the program utilized, and MANT is the program that they're utilizing.
Okay.
So they are identifying the program that we're utilizing, so it is complete the way it's written.
Is there any reason it's still bracketed in the policy? I mean, if we're identifying that, can we just remove the brackets?
It's the
Show where those.
brackets stay in until you adopt it. Then the brackets come out. So that's why they're still there for now for the second reading.
Would it
I guess,
help if we like,
I
have
think
the
we should have,
acronym?
yeah, we should have the acronym at least spelled out. I don't know
It's
what
not
that
his
is.
name, it's his name, it's David
Okay.
Mant is the
Okay.
person who, and it is called the MANT system, if you wanted to say the actual, like, instead of MANT, you can say, like, you know, so it isn't an acronym. It's
Oh,
not.
okay. Maybe that's where the confusion.
Is, I get what you're saying, but if I were gonna read this as a parent, I'd be like, what does that mean? And could I Google it and find the
I just
answer?
Googled it, I'm like, what's come up when I put in MANT, and then it's the MANT system, if you
Okay.
wanted to say, if you wanted to have that might help, so if people put in the MANT system and wanted to Google it.
Cheryl is a MANT trainer, so she's certified to train.
Mhm.
And it's the first one that comes up on mine, but that might just.
So then I guess I'm thinking we either don't have a footnote there because we are identifying it in a paragraph. Or we put something in the footnote of meaning, because right now,
I would be fine reading the footnote off.
So, can I say something? Hello?
Go ahead.
I just Googled it and they have MANT as one of the sites I went to said MANT, capital M, and then small ANDT to refer to it as the name of a system. Like not all caps, meaning like an acronym.
I would spell it out, the MANT system and capitalize that, the T, the M, and the S. That's how they have it on there.
and then get rid of the footnote. Yeah. That makes more sense to me because the way I read it now, I'm like, we're missing information.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard a comment about the brackets. I'm not sure I followed that. I mean, because I understood the brackets were in there just because that was a placeholder for a name to be filled in by the district and we filled it in. So I guess I wasn't following the comment there.
The brackets are the identification.
Sorry, can you hear me? I think I lost the audio.
I hear you. I can hear you, but I can't hear them.
Okay.
So once we approve Richard and post this to our policy website, there will be no brackets there. It's an identifier for us as the board. So
Right.
as soon as we vote on it, then Diane takes all the brackets out, I think, right, Diane?
Yeah, I guess I'm not following that. Like, we have brackets and policies until we approve the policy. I mean, I don't understand that, but,
Draft policies.
Draft policies,
right, but all this language is draft until we adopt it, correct? I mean,
correct. Well,
yeah,
I
so
don't-
nothing special about the brackets that I can see, but whatever, I'm not worth, sweating on.
No, that- the language that's changing that we have to choose from is in black.
Did you hear that?
Well, I will.
He might
say-
not be able to read.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that, but I mean, isn't there other language in here that we've changed to that's not bracketed? I don't know.
When the language is changed by the state, that's a new rule that we have to follow regardless, and it's added. Diane, you want to explain how that's presented to us? They're presented with the
Right.
gray.
So the language that's added in the dark gray, like above where it's dark gray, that's what OSBA is saying. Whether it was part of the legislative law, this is language you now need, is required. So you don't have a choice to say, no, I don't want that. But if it's in a bracket, those are the choices that give local districts decisions. If they want to keep it or not keep it. So when you see that meant there in brackets with a yellow highlight, it is telling you for the second reading, we have named our training program like the footnote suggested. So as adopted that way, tomorrow, when I send them to OSBA, the brackets will be gone and the highlighting will be gone because we resolved the brackets.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I guess so. Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
Anything? I'm just kidding.
I'll make a motion to accept or to adopt. Do I have to list all those out, or can I say 1 through 8?
What do you want?
You just say the group numbers 1 through whatever.
Numbers 1 through 8 is presented on the agenda this evening
With
with the revisions that we have discussed.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Is someone able to read back the edits that folks requested or that are going to be incorporated? Or is that too much to ask?
To, number one, recommendation is to change the language, the disabled student in 3B1, 10B1, and 12A to the student. For policy 7 IKF, graduation requirements, footnote number 1. For policy number 8, to GAB, identification of the MAT system, changing the capitalization of the and then M in MAT and S in system so that it reads better,
And removing the footnote.
and removing the footnote.
Correct.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Ginger.
And I only did that for Diane. She would have done that, but the computer just, I ran out of power. She had to start.
Okay, back to the question. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Christie,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Oh, aye. Heidi,
Aye.
votes for, that motion carries. Thank you. JCD, did you have some
Yeah, just to put.
clarifying language that we?
Yeah, the reading of the policies here, we have adopted these previously, and what we have done in the past is to limit the access to Narcan for overdose prevention to a few sites and just the district security person and the nurse. And given, we haven't had an incident where we need to use this yet, but should we, it needs to be available in all buildings. So we want to adopt the policy in a way that allows us to provide staff training in all buildings to be able to use it and to have it securely stored in each building. And that's it.
So, I'm just confused on the way that it's presented in that 1A paragraph. Where is that number 1 referencing? I don't see where that footnote originates, like that. Oh, okay, that's weird. So
Yeah.
maybe it's just the placement. I don't know. Like, again, I just see that as a sentence that could just stay there without a footnote.
You're on page 2, no, 3,
I'm on
top of the page.
1-9.
Oh, 1-9, okay.
It's highlighted in yellow right now, under
Okay.
1A. So
I get what you're
I
saying.
don't,
I think the footnote is for like, to let us know.
Mhm.
It's not really there to like,
Yeah, I think that's sort of my struggle, that, you know, I'm accustomed to footnotes like this sort of being notes to drafter, you know, that are removed in the final draft. And it's just, I guess, a little awkward for me to approve on second reading a document that's still sort of in draft form, with stuff that's going to be removed after we, you know, act on it. I think that was sort of where my struggle was coming from.
Good point. Really,
so you never lay eyes on the final copy.
until after it's done. Yeah. But that is correct, the footnote is a guidance.
so your proposal is to just leave the highlighted yellow section as is, not altered for district specifics.
I'm saying that what we are, the bracket, like for example, 1A
Mhm,
bracket,
mhm.
that the information in the bracket will be the policy. Then the brackets go away and the highlights go away, and then it's included in the policy.
And the footnote goes away.
And the footnotes.
Okay.
And then 2E, same thing. The language within the bracket remains in the policy, but the word bracketed choice, colon, and the brackets go away.
So,
This is just a first reading, though, correct?
mhm.
So if you have edits, we should probably approve this first reading, then come back with a second reading for edits,
Mhm.
if you want to work on it,
Mhm.
rather than wordsmith it right now.
Yeah.
Can I state on 2E under the training? That does not read well to me. That I think it needs to be reworded or worked a little bit. Doesn't.
I agree. I had to read the sentence a couple times.
Yeah. Okay,
So approve as a first reading, but with editing that sentence.
Mhm.
Are there any other places you guys would like to see some work done, either wordsmithing?
I have a question and I'm trying to go back and forth, but the AR and the policy itself seem to be exactly the same. Am I missing something?
Let me check. I can't think of- Oh, actually. the ARN.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't really look at it right now, so I'll just leave that to you.
Can we,
It's coded -AR, so I mean, I'll have to look.
Yeah,
so can we table this to our next first work session? Okay, I'll make a motion that we table JHCD and JHCDA-AR till the next work session.
Do I hear a second?
If we table it, or is this the first reading you're tabling it?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. This is, why can't we just use this as a first reading? And then when we look at it for our second reading and adoption, then, it'll,
I'm leaving my motion, but if somebody else wants to do a first reading, that's fine. I'll still vote no.
so, I just need to be clear if what I'm looking at is actually the AR or the policy. Because if I'm not reading the policy, then it can't be a first reading, right?
Will you, Diane, can you? When I hit that link, that comes up, when I hit that link, that comes up. Or it could be the same thing. It could be that.
I mean, what I see in front of me is the model
Both
that stuff
ARs.
-AR. They're both pulling up the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Identical. So I'm okay with first reading,
Yeah.
but of which document, or are they the same? Is
We
there
could,
only
we
one?
could do a first reading of the document that we're looking at,
Mhm.
and then for the second reading,
Clarify the.
clarify the other part. Yeah, well,
So I have a motion on the table. I don't have a second for it, so that's gonna be, I can lack the second. So floor is open. If somebody wants to make a motion, I'm moving forward with a first reading.
Okay, I move that we have a first reading for JHCD-JHCDA-AR.
Your second,
I'll second. Okay, sorry.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to be clear that this is with the accepting the wording of adding the lax, whatever, the Narcon. That's with the highlighted, including the highlighted information, correct?
I'll let you speak to
Yeah,
that, so,
yes.
okay. Because it's still a working document, but yes, that was a clarifying yes. Heidi,
Okay, thank you.
any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Christie,
Aye.
Crystal,
No,
Richard?
Aye.
Bill? Aye. Heidi?
Hi.
Votes for. So that is first reading on that one. Moving on to 2C, corporate responsible practice of Roman Mander.
Oh, yeah.
And we only have.
To say now, I know,
bye.
I followed my directions. So, but I think, we'll be okay. Because we're not gonna let you go back to your locker and get your book. But a fact that we might do during this, and it actually looks at two things. It really, because this is in the context of our strategic plan, and our work, in becoming more culturally responsive practitioners, is in service of our strategic plan and doing that work. So what I thought I might share at this point is a little bit of the opportunity the strategic plan is providing us as a school district for aligning our work together, aligning our goals, aligning our plans, aligning some language, and the way we understand and are able to talk with each other. That notion of culturally responsive practice, that question has always come up. What do we mean by that? Well, we're using Zuraidah Hammond's research synthesis as our guide for that, for us to be able to make sense of that as a school district. So it becomes a shared framework that we can all learn from. That notion of warm demander, simply creates a picture of a notion of, in our case, of educators that because of the connections and relationships they build with kids, have a tendency to be able to expect more. And students have a tendency to want to perform for those kinds of teachers and those kinds of leaders because they know they care about them enough to push them to be their best. So there, the opportunities is, you remember that some of the feedback that came from the survey and the strategic plan was, darn, we're not that big of a system. Can we get more aligned? Can we pull things together? Can we be more collaborative? Can we have more common language and conversation and alignment? So, so that's why I was sharing. I want to share some examples about how this plays out, some of the awesome work that your staff is doing along those lines. But it'll serve to show some examples of how it's actually moving into action in the district. Might give you some ideas about, okay, if as a board, how might we also kind of start to move towards some actions? Because I think that was the intent around the notion of becoming a culture of warm demand in the district, and can kind of see how some boots on the ground is playing out along those lines. So, let's see, who's driving my presentation? Okay. Thanks. Thanks. So, we've kind of put that mission front and center, North Marion learning together to cultivate lifelong growth. I share this notion of our vision statement, that notion of, so what's the, what do we think it looks like, and we're starting to do it well. The notion of communities engaged and unified in providing all students equitable access to their chosen path. And that's where we start to get into some of the notions of, what are the goals? What are the chosen paths that our kids have? What are the strengths and assets that they're going to be building on? And how can we support them? How do we find out more about them? And how can we support them as we do that work? So create some opportunity to align some goal setting across the district. One of the things, as I said, the strategic plan gives us an opportunity to do, is to align goals and align plans. So we absolutely know that the more aligned our goals are, from the board all the way down to the goals that students are setting for themselves, the more alignment we have along those lines towards achieving those big broad goals and our mission, the better chance we have of doing that collectively as a district. You can have lots of individual goals, achievement along the way, but we're really thinking about how do we achieve those broader district goals in our strategic plan. We also know that planning goes the same way. You can have a strategic plan that if everyone is, if buildings and administrators and teachers and others are setting different or developing different plans that aren't aligned to that plan, you probably aren't going to accomplish the goals in that original plan. So what I'm hoping that you're going to have a chance to see is how that's actually playing out for you and your leadership in the district. So we've been involved over the course of the last month or so with goal setting with our teachers and our staff. And I know you probably know this, but each of our teachers and administrators are asked to set one professional goal. That is, in essence, a goal about how we're going to work on our own professional interests and needs and wants. And we're going to set 2 student learning and growth goals. And so those are growth goals where we are actually asked to demonstrate how to, based on our instruction, that student growth has actually happened. Over the past few years and throughout COVID, we've also been encouraged and allowed to set one student learning and growth goal that's more related to social and emotional learning. And so this is where this notion of kind of warm demand comes in. So anything that we're doing kind of create better connections, get to know our kids better, build deeper relationships, find out students' strengths and interests, outside of, my classroom, is going to help further those relationships. And the theory of action will allow us to expect more, or kids will want to do more for us because they know we care about them personally. We can connect with them on things besides, my social studies lesson or beyond that. And we've been seeing that play out in schools forever and ever. This just gives us a way to talk about it commonly. So as we've done our goal setting, across the district with our staff, we've actually really encouraged, our staff to think about what are the strategic goals across the district and how can we think about connecting the goals that we have in our classrooms. Many of them naturally fit our strategic goals, but at least giving us a chance to talk about, a goal alignment and the opportunities that exist there. So we've shared over time those 3 strategic goals that we have and tried to make some intentional connections about the work that we might be doing, the goals that we might be setting, and how they might actually align to those goals. They all integrate and they're all interconnected. But your goal number 2 says, empower each student to develop skills across the curriculum in ways that build their confidence to challenge themselves. This is that goal, in essence, said, how can we continue to raise rigor and raise our expectations and support kids in developing the skills, confidence, and confidence to make them just want to go out and not be afraid to take on those challenges. And in this goal, you've noticed some of the indicators and measures are connected with the mindsets that kids develop. The growth mindsets, which is part of a whole range of academic mindsets that they support. The photo here, I just want to go back to the photo here as part of our math curriculum adoption team. So you kind of see a couple goals in action. But this was during a particular conversation where Des, after again doing a great job of asking folks to really think about strategic goals, as we're doing our math curriculum adoption work, said, what is it that we really want to see our kids knowing and being able to do? How do we want them to interact? What kinds of skills and competencies do we want them to develop? So that we make sure ultimately that when we adopt those materials, they support, those high levels of learning that our teachers are actually reflecting they want to have kids engaged in. So those are things that are coming out of all of our work and all of our thinking along those. So I'm thinking about goal 2, and now you can go ahead. I'm thinking about goal 2. A lot of times we've connected the notion of what are some of the warm demander, types of activities and strategies that we might use, because we know that in order to push kids to higher levels, we want to be able to have those kinds of relationships with them that motivates them basically to want to do better because they know we care. So keeping in mind that this is all in the interest of, so we have the personal regard connected with warm demander, but as we pointed out, and go ahead, Linda, as we pointed out in chapter 7, Zaretta Hammond in her work around culturally responsive teaching says this is in service, of building these academic mindsets in children. Because what we know is that when children don't feel like they belong to that academic community, when they don't have a sense of, I can do this, I know I can, I have confidence in myself to try. When they don't understand the connection between practice and improvement. That, you know, if I practice, I may not be good at this right now, but if I practice at it, I can get better. And when they don't see relevance in the work they're doing for their world, they have a tendency to exhibit behaviors that we would kind of consider non-academic behaviors. And what we're trying to do with this work, and we have to be culturally responsive to do it well, is to make sure that we're focusing on the right thing. We're not just trying to put out the fires of some of the behaviors that we can spend a lot of time working on. You know, when ultimately we know that if we don't work on building these mindsets in kids, building their confidence and their competence, that we'll just have to keep putting out those other kinds of fires forever and ever. So those are the connections we're making, and really important ones. They're in the interest of raising rigor, which is, again, Zaretta's framework for culturally responsive teaching, and really where the warm demand is embedded. So I want to share, as Deanna and I had a chance to talk with lots of our teachers about goals. These are some of the kinds of things that are either in student learning and growth or in professional goals. Teachers are talking about doing. So no one said, I want to be a warm demander. But the strategies that go along with that are really deeply embedded in their goals. So they're talking about doing more frequent check-ins with certain students and making stronger connections, having more deeper one-on-one conversations with certain students, particularly maybe ones that they don't know as well or haven't had as many interactions with as others. They put in strategies to really intentionally try to become more aware of what growth mindset language looks like and behaviors look like in classrooms and how that plays out. There are notions of belonging in all classrooms, but especially in math classrooms. If anyone has ever said, I'm not a math person, there's almost automatically kind of I don't belong in this classroom. So what are the intentional strategies I can do to create, more sense of belonging for all students, in any content area, particularly within math? What are some things I can do, especially to learn more about my students so I can show them some personal regard when I interact with them in the classroom, but it's not always just about my content area. There are goals about attending more outside events that kids are involved in so that I can make those connections. Choosing focal students to learn more about students that I may not have noticed as much or seen as much without doing that. Helping students work harder on the kinds of goals that they're setting for themselves. Specific support for specific groups of students, like our emerging bilingual students, our English learners. Goals around building student agency and advocacy, getting them to speak up and advocate for themselves more. Different ways of thinking about using the advisory period to make some of these kinds of connections that we do have at the high school. There are teachers talking about, well, I'm gonna get involved in some activities, maybe be an advisor for a club or a group that I never would have thought that I might do, but it kind of gets me out of my comfort zone and I learn more about how kids are feeling along those lines. And then just some real specific goals around building classroom culture and community. So I think you can kind of see that this is going on across the district, you can kind of see the collective culture that gets built around this when we have a chance to look at how it is collectively. We think our kids are feeling, that sense as well, that there's more interest in them and their interests and their strengths, and we're continuing to try to learn more about them so we can build on those strengths as we continue to have warm demand for them and can expect them to grow. So, so those were some examples. I just had a few. This was just recently last week, a couple of things. This was our leadership class, who they had a game night. Again, very intentionally said, well, we have lots of activities and sports and and things, but here's a group of kids that we may not have something extra for them. So a group of kids that that like to get in there and battle electronically, so some game nights to celebrate some of their strengths and interests. Go ahead, Linda. And We've, kind of developed some new musicians around school with a mariachi group. We have a mariachi band going now, and there are kids that are doing things. And this was a lunchtime performance last week. So there are some kids that are actually becoming known in much different ways than they've been known before. And they're also getting out there and performing in ways that they may not have ever thought they could do before. So they're knocking down some of their own walls. And just lots of opportunities. It's nice to be back and for folks to be out and seeing each other. And, we've seen you at events and those types of things too, where the opportunity just to make connections that aren't just in school and just in the classroom can really help. So, so I just thought that we kind of take a look and see how that's kind of playing around. You can see the alignment of some of the work and the language, and maybe even gives you some ideas about, sometimes it doesn't take much to kind of engage in warm demand or strategies and activities. It's really just kind of for us to continue to get to know each other outside the typical, realms of accountability that we have. But ultimately, we're actually being accountable to our strategic plan while we're doing it. So that was that's how the notion of warm demander is playing out. And again, I sure encourage you, those chapters 5, 6, and 7 really kind of give that picture of where it's going and why it's really critical for us to achieve those goals around raising expectations for our kids. And I thought I'd go ahead and share this now because it's connected to alignment. It'll shorten then, anything we might talk about in the business meeting. But I wanted to just kind of show you a little bit about kind of this notion of aligning goals and plans. I know at a work session or retreat early on, you saw how each building and department were developing kind of theories of action, their own action plans that were aligned to the strategic plan. And now we've got a tracking system, so that individual schools can keep track of the evidence they have of moving towards the indicators and measures in your strategic plan. So Linda, if you could maybe just go ahead and hit the high school one, because I know Deanne doesn't mind sharing. And pull that up. So what each building has is a strategic planning tracker, and it looks like this. So you've got each goal, you've got the indicator, and the measures that the board has adopted in essence in the strategic plan. And in this case, we're just kind of systematically adding for each of those measures or indicators, each building is able to kind of collect the evidence, add the evidence in that tracker. So periodically, principals are sitting down and just thinking through or reflecting and tracking evidence that they have towards the indicators and measures around each goal. These aren't the indicators and measures in this document, aren't the indicators and measures, from their own plan, but they're aligning their work to the whole district plan. So everyone has the same indicators and measures that they're looking at here. So again, you remember there were 3 indicators for each goal, and under each indicator there were 3 measures. So we're keeping track of that at each building. And again, it's actually kind of fun to reflect and see that you're really making progress. So what we're doing then, and what I have kind of drafty form is, and you can go ahead and back out of that, Linda, and go to the other side. We go over to goal 1 maybe. As we look across the district, then we can look broadly. You might have to click on that top piece up there. There you go. That would get it. We're kind of trying to put together an unscientific kind of rating of where we are in terms of progress towards any given goal, based on looking very broadly across the whole district. So, so for goal 1 here, you know, the goal is there, the indicators are there. And then some of the broad district activities and accomplishments and achievements under each of those indicators are highlighted on this. And, you know, this is, you know, it's got kind of a 20% broken into segments of 20%. So ultimately we can kind of start to think about where we are, you know, moving towards completion of those first year goals with some type of visual that way. But critically identifying the activities that we have evidence of, you know, is I think the important part of our tracking, accountability, but importantly, our alignment, you know, around the goals and plans and activities that we're involved in. So that's how we're trying to help it hang together right now in terms of those levels of alignment. So thanks for letting me share that.
Thanks, Bill.
Mhm.
Any questions?
I had a question.
Sorry.
This is Rich. I did have a question. If
Oh, just a second. Go ahead, Bill. Bill had a question first. Adia.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Ginger and Bill mainly, but also a couple teachers, 2 students, I believe you were one of them. Glenn got a sentence in, but last Friday we were the lead article in Oregon Education News on this program, and it was a well-written article, really showed up North Marion quite well. And wanted to thank and congratulate you guys for doing that.
We wouldn't have folks write an article like that if it wasn't happening. You know, folks were really doing it. So it was nice to be able to, you know, be honest about what we actually were doing. And that is what we did.
And Rachel Wilcox gave a great example of how it was working. She deserves a shout out for that as well.
Go ahead, Richard. Did you have a question?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm just curious, you know, how are we going to know if individual faculty members are sort of embodying these concepts or displaying the kinds of behaviors that we're trying to promote here in the classroom? And also, you know, how are we going to know if students are actually seeing, you know, the kind of environment we would want them to see in the classroom?
I mean, I think those are really good questions. You know, the first question is that, you know, my first answer would be, you know, you can't mandate what matters. You know what I mean? So we have to, when we're being transformative in our work, you know, we really have to, you know, just kind of move into it the way we are, and continuing to try to, you know, be through our own goal setting strategies, our own coaching, our own mentoring, our own work together in our professional learning communities, keep trying to build that culture. You know, we do have many of the goals that teachers are setting involve survey data to try to track, you know what I mean, how they're moving. So if I have a student learning and growth goal around building some growth mindset or something like that, I've got to have a pre and a post. And so teachers are looking at opportunities for surveys to measure those types of things. Professional goals provide opportunities for reflection, for staff reflection, you know, at the end of those years. And what we're talking about is exactly what you're talking about, Richard, is so how will you know what I mean? So what are you going to be looking for, you know, in your classrooms and such, to see those kinds of changes take place. Ultimately, you know, we did participate, you know, in many of our schools last year in the Youth Truth Survey, which is a survey that's kind of normed statewide and nationwide around some of these types of ideas around, you know, it's really designed to get student voice in terms of the experiences that they're having in school. We had some good baseline data with the Youth Truth Survey that we did last year, and we've talked about, you know, looking forward to actually seeing that again. That will be what I think a really good measure of whether we've moved the dial for students in students' eyes and in their perceptions around that. But your questions are good. Even the notion of a warm demander is all in the perception of the student. You know, get to just we don't anoint ourselves warm demanders. It's only if students see us that way that it counts.
Yeah.
So we'll keep working on that. We have, again, multiple examples for some of the things that that we're thinking about right now. I think that youth truth survey will be the broadest and most standardized kind of way of looking at that.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bill.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
the report.
We have one other item here. I'm not sure that we're gonna discuss it all that much because of time constraints, but did you want to say a couple
Yeah,
of
I
words
just
on
want to say a couple of things where, I know that the board was committed to holding some community forums, listening sessions, gathering information. And we wanted to do one, with like focus groups, and there was one for the migrant parent evening that's coming up. And now we'll have to move that to January. But it's really important that they know what to expect, that parent groups know what to expect. So having a subcommittee of people working with me to discuss what the board would like to do and how they would like to set it up, so that we can explain that to the people who will be inviting participants to help them prepare would be really important. So if over the next week or two, I can have some volunteers that meet with me, I appreciate it.
Any interest? Or any volunteers?
I can help with one of those event coordination, yeah. I can do event coordination.
Okay.
Did we pick a specific date?
We
I
have,
didn't think so.
there are some meetings that are already on the schedule. We've had one for November, but we're not prepared to do it. So we won't be, we haven't had time to prepare for it, so we won't be doing that date. So we have time now. The next
Mhm.
good window is in January. We have time to prepare.
Do you know what the date in January is, or
I'll
Not-
have to look
there
it
isn't.
up, but unless,
some
Irma, do
flexibility?
you happen to have that handy?
And I think, no.
Yeah, I can look it up.
Okay, well, if there's some interest here, I'll reach out to you individually and see if
I'm interested in what the overall goal of our,
So that's the board's
Yeah.
decision. That's why I have to talk to the
Yeah,
board to
that's-
find out
that's really
what your
we,
goal
um,
is.
you know, how we want to accomplish a goal of community outreach through meeting with, you know, specific groups within the community. That's one of the strategic goals, and that's part of, I mean, there was interest in the board being,
sure,
Well,
yeah,
at some
no, I mean,
point.
that's definitely interesting, but I've never been able to pinpoint what is the goal that we are trying to achieve with the community outreach.
So
So
we need
it's
to have a
hard-
conversation. about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's hard to pick the venue and if we don't have a goal set for it,
That's the board's goal, so,
right?
yeah, we need to.
So
Yeah.
our goal is to have a meeting.
January.
Thank you. January 9th.
you know, some of it's together. I mean, part of it is community outreach and being present within the, you know, the sub-communities that exist within North Marion community. And, you know, part of that strategic plan is to be more visible. Have, you know what I mean? Have more open lines of communication. How do you build that though? Because if you just have a come meet the board, then you're gonna have people show up. But if you can tailor it, you can fine tune it. And so that's where I want, you know, a little bit of input from you guys, because I'm gonna gather myself.
Yeah,
So,
Come on, people.
Good.
The holiday.
the 19th.
I don't know if it's a holiday.
Is that
it's
MLK?
MLK Day.
okay, then,
That doesn't officially make it a holiday. Right.
Usually MLK Day is a Monday.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm on the
No,
wrong
the
day. Okay, you're right.
16th. It's a. that's
Okay.
a
Thank you,
Thursday.
sir, thank you.
My bad.
Okay, so it is 7:15. Let's take a few minute break between work session and our business meeting. So give everybody a chance to stretch legs for a second.
Okay.
And we'll come back. So,
Right. What time would you like to?
25.
20?
About 7:22.
Yeah. Well, you would have-
We'll make that.